Peace, family. It's your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. It is so good to see everybody tonight. Welcome to Night School. Night School is a show we have every night here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel, where I break down the most urgent issues, the most pressing topics, the most controversial conversations happening in the world today. And we don't do it like them other people do it. We don't have superficial talking points. We don't have drive-by analysis. Instead, we have deep dive conversations. It is not a podcast. It is not a cable news show. It is a global classroom. And tonight we are continuing our conversation that we've been having about the 2024 presidential election and what it means for the radical tradition, what it means for progressive voters, and what it means for Black people here in the United States. How do we hold forth a vision of ourselves that is connected to and committed to liberation at the same time that we are practical and pragmatic about the issues that we have in front of us? What's the best way to get free is the conversation we're really having. Last night I had on Isra Shakir, who is a brilliant Syrian American activist and thinker and cultural worker, and she talked about exactly the reasons why she could not support Kamala Harris. She talked about the reasons why she absolutely could not pull that lever for the Democratic Party in light of everything that has happened. But I didn't want that to be the only conversation that we have. We want to have a complex and complicated and nuanced conversation. And tonight, we got some special guests who are going to help us talk about and think through election 2024 in their own way. Recently, minister and poet Dante Stewart penned a letter that he shared on social media. He starts the letter by saying that he feels, quote, a kind of sadness at the way people are treating Black people who are supporting Vice President Kamala Harris, who have stood in solidarity with Palestinians, only to be told, we are the worst people in the world when we are on the front lines every day in the fight against the worst of America. I encourage you all to go check out that Instagram. It's worth the read. Everything Dante does is worth engaging and taking very seriously. We'll make sure to drop the link in the video description so you can check it all out and read it all the way through. While we're talking about video descriptions and Instagram, make sure you hit us up on Instagram and follow the show at Night School MLH. Also, right here on YouTube, make sure you hit the like button if you're not a subscriber. Become one. It's no time like the present. Join the Night School family by hitting subscribe right now. And if you're watching us on X or Twitter, get out of that cesspool. Come on over to YouTube and hang out with us here where we have conversation, where you can be part of the dialogue. So there is a legitimate critique against voting for Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. But there's also a legitimate critique against voting for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, especially on the issue of Palestine. So then the question becomes, well, who do you vote for? What do you do? Of course, there are a few options, third-party options in particular that you can consider. I am a member for decades now of the Green Party, and Jill Stein is at the top of that ticket with a potential VP choice in civil rights attorney, author, and professor, the brilliant Noura Anikat. If you're considering voting for Jill Stein, by the way, let us know. I want to know who's actually thinking about that in our community. Type hell yeah in the chat. If you think about Jill Stein, type hell yeah in the chat. If you're voting for a different third-party option, whether it's Brother West, whether it's Sister Claudia, whether it's what's his name, Robert Kennedy, yuck. Write it in the chat. Let us know who you're thinking about, because there has been a big push to get the momentum behind third-party candidates as a conscience, something that allows you to not have a guilty conscience as you pull that lever. It's fair to all people, all issues, from reparations for Black folk to radically reimagining policing to thinking about healthcare differently, to thinking about reproductive justice, to freedom around the diaspora. There's some division, though, on which third-party candidate should get the never Trumpers or the never Harrisers or Harrisers. Who should get those votes? And Jill Stein is the only candidate. We got to be honest about this. And I'm not saying it because I'm in the Green Party. It's just a fact. Jill Stein is the only candidate with the party infrastructure, with the balloting infrastructure to really win, to have a chance. I mean, even an academic chance, even an abstract, hypothetical, distant chance of winning. She's on all 50 ballots. No one else is, to my knowledge. Then I came across this video. This really got me thinking. It's a video from Dr. Elizabeth Booker Houston, who is a federal compliance professional. She currently works with the Food and Drug Administration's privacy office, but she's also a professor. She's a comedian. You know, Black women, they do everything and they all do it well. She's been vocal about her support of VP Harris. And she had this to say recently about people telling her that she should vote for Jill Stein because of the issue of Palestine. Listen to this.
Talking about the motherfuckers who come to my comments dripping with moral superiority and saying, I'm not voting for a genocider or a warmonger. I'm doing better than you and voting for Jill Stein because she is clean of the evils of the world. Is she? She did take money from AIPAC, but she did take money from, Lockheed Martin. Do y'all know who that is? Because in DC, we call them the goddamn devil. That is one of the #1 defense firms in the world upholding the military-industrial complex, and they directly train the IDF. This woman says she wants to dismantle the military-industrial complex, but takes money from companies that uphold that and is also running to be commander-in-chief of said military-industrial complex. She also had dinner with Vladimir Putin back in 2015, and he was bombing Syria at the time. Now, she says she was there to talk about peace, but last I checked, people don't take too kindly to cordial meetings with warmongers bombing the Middle East, but what do I know? She also admitted that even though she was there to chastise him about Syria, there was no translator on site, so they couldn't understand each other. So I don't know how that works, but I do know that there was a huge Russian bot campaign all over social media to put her name everywhere and disrupt our election system. She also got upset when people pointed out that her rhetoric was leaning very anti-vax because she was undermining the regulatory approval schemes of vaccines. She said this was the same as the birther conspiracy against Obama. Yeah, that white woman compared being called an anti-vaxxer to racism. Not surprised. She's out of touch. She lives in a 70% white affluent community in Massachusetts. I've never seen anything about her working directly with the historically marginalized people she claims to care about. I pointed out the contributions that her campaign took in 2016 from Lockheed Martin, and I had people like this get upset and say, oh, but that's misrepresentation. Because if you look on the website, it says that that money doesn't come directly from the company. Oh no, it either comes from their PAC or their employees or their employees' family members, and this came from the employees and their family members. And I said, oh, okay, same analysis for AIPAC then. Because if you go look at the AIPAC donations and scroll down to, say, George Latimer, and look at the sizable donation from AIPAC, you scroll over and see that, about $2.6 million of that came from individuals, employees, their family members, same as Jill Stein with Lockheed Martin, and only $5,000 came from the PAC. So based on the mental gymnastics that people are doing to justify this problematic woman running for office, I should ignore that $2.6 million, right?
White girls politicking, that's that Sarah Palin.
I love her. I love her work. I love her how she produces that content, challenges us, but also makes us laugh. Anyways, the brilliant sister. You can watch the full clips of her on her Instagram page at Booker Squared. She also calls out Jill Stein's record on big banks and, yes, big oil. And of course, we will give Jill Stein every opportunity to respond to all of this. She was going to come on anyway, but I want to give her an opportunity to respond to these specific critiques. We'll make sure that happens. To those people who typed "hell yeah" comments a couple minutes ago, are you still steadfast in your vote for Jill Stein? Let the class know this is a safe space. Now, I will say the moderator is going to be flagging any spam and any hate speech that happens in the comments. Not just people who agree with me or disagree with me. Anybody who gives me the hate speech, anybody who gives the spam, they up out of this piece. Anyway, it's time to bring in the brilliant people. I've done enough yapping. Let's talk to Dr. Elizabeth Booker Houston. She is here joining us for Night School, along with minister and poet Dante Stewart, two of my favorite people to follow and watch and learn from. But also, I've come to understand that they enjoy engaging each other. And Dante looked genuinely excited to see our brilliant sister in the waiting area in the virtual green room. So I'm glad that y'all two could connect. Welcome to Night School.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do want to point out, I'm not Dr. Elizabeth Houston. The Juris Doctor always throws people off, but technically JDs, we don't get called doctors. So I do want to say that. I'm not trying to take from the doctors.
No. All good. That's my mistake. That's my mistake.
No, you're good.
But can I call you Juris Doctor?
You can call me Liz.
That's what I tell you. I say just call me Mark. I don't need all them degrees and fancy titles, man. Just call me Mark. It's all good. I'm your brother. Let's build, y'all. How do we end up here? I felt what you said, Elizabeth, when you said that you could be standing for this issue of Palestine, where you could be doing the advocacy work and trying to stand in solidarity, however imperfectly, but trying to do that work. And because of the vote you cast, you are suddenly called a genocide supporter or genocide endorser. Dante, you've communicated a similar kind of sensibility of like how we treat people who are expressing a desire to make this choice. It's not that I think that people shouldn't be held accountable, and I don't want to sound like Miss Millie on like Color Purple. I've always been good to you people. Like, it's not that. It's more like this is more complicated than you all are making it sound. Elizabeth, I'm going to start with you. What are you experiencing, and how do you make sense of it?
Yeah, I guess for the thing with me is, in the constant message that I put on my platform is, we don't worship politicians. They're public servants and they work for us. I play Kamala Harris in a show, in a comedy show, where we make fun of them on stage live. Like, I have no qualms about calling out any politician, even the ones I vote for. So I find it really interesting that I'm seeing people, one, tie their identity so strongly to politicians. So, for example, I had people come in the comment section on my Jill Stein videos and said, "Thank you for being honest. I'm still going to vote for her." And I'm like, "Hey, that's cool. Stay with your conscience." But then there were other people who were taking it as if I had personally attacked them. And I'm like, wait a minute. These politicians are not us. They are not us. So that's part of it. And then the other side is not understanding how corrupt and complex our system is, both the political system and the legal system here in the United States, in that it is, I think, impossible for anybody to have their hands clean. And so at the end of the day, I am not a vote blue no matter who person. I never spread that message. You will not hear that come out of my mouth. I always tell people, at the end of the day, you need to vote what best aligns for you. But please understand that none of us have this moral high ground that some folks are trying to claim. No matter how they're voting, I do give the caveat that I do think all of us on the left, regardless, have a moral high ground over people supporting Donald Trump, because that man is pure evil. But that's what it is at the end of the day, man. But at the end of the day, like I said, I need people to vote for their morals, and I encourage people to vote down ballot. I want them to really focus on, if you can't vote for president and you're like, everybody sucks, I feel you. But pay attention to who's running for Congress, who's running for your local city council. Pay attention who's running for your school boards, because the right-wing Moms for Liberty group that is now pushing a lot of fascist policies at the national level literally started by infiltrating local school boards. So there's different levels you can get into, and you're never going to hear shame from me. I've made many videos where I also praise the uncommitted delegates and uncommitted voters, because I do think that what they're doing is important. Even if I'm voting differently, I think we all bring something to the table that's important for democracy. And it's really hard to see the division come in when we can all work together in doing our part.
Dante?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And thank you, Mark, for opening up the space. I also affirm, man, my love, my deep thanks for you, and just following along in your journey, and just, going to school constantly mentally, by following along, and just grateful for you. And I resonate with that with Elizabeth. I feel many people aren't taking into account life as it actually is happening. Now, this is partly Saul Alinsky's Rule for Radicals, which I think everybody should at least check out that book, and particularly thinking about, like dealing with the world as it is, not just simply as I imagine it to be. I think for many people, we're so, I think the deeper issue is that many of us are in pain, and we're tired, we're exhausted. We have, given our money, we've given our time, we've given our voice, and it seems to all be for nothing. And because the problems of the world are so vast and so violent and so visceral, that it seems as if like nothing that we actually do is accomplishing anything at all. And so I think many people in this moment are really reasoning very emotionally, and rightfully so. Like, I think like it's impossible for us to go through what we've collectively gone through over the last 10 months. Whether you have gotten new books and read new books and learned about Palestine and learned about foreign policy and learned about these things, learned about our country and our relation to Israel and the issues in the Middle East, and to see many of the videos on the ground through journalists and photographers, some of them who have been killed, many of them who have been displaced, many people who have lost children and family members. It's impossible for us as human beings not to, in some sense, to be affected by it. We need to care carefully for one another in that sense, and and we also have lives that we have to live as well, and that we're accountable to the people around us. And I think that we have to allow both of those things to be in tension together, and allow both of those things to have a voice in which we care for them without silencing them. And I can tell you this, man, I'm from South Carolina. And one of the things, I come from a family of community organizers in South Carolina, and we have faced the worst of America in this country. I mean, it's hard to quantify, what Black people in the South have had to deal with over this kind of long time that we as Black people have been in this country. And it's not to discount what others have gone through, but what we have gone through down here accounts for something. And to be able not to leave, and to be able not to escape, and to be able to not to, find a way to just like be released from it, and have to face it again and again and again and again and again, and organize and mobilize while also doing that against a wall that seems to not move. To have to do that, to me, like, that means something, and that presents a sort of wisdom that we have to listen to and we can't discount. And I think we have to deal with honestly, because I think Kiese said it best. Down here, man, it's just different. And the difference is, you just don't get to not think about life as it is, because Monday comes and Tuesday comes. And like Elizabeth said, I'm in a town in Augusta, Georgia, where we're on the front lines, literally, of every single fight in this nation.
Talk to me about what it means, though, to engage life as it is, because the people who disagree with you are going to say life as it is 40,000 people dead in Gaza. Life as it is a U.S. presidential administration that has been fairly unwavering in its support of violence against Palestinians for decades now. And as long as we support it, the status quo for them will never change. So when you say life as it is, what they're hearing is you're saying life as it is for me, as opposed to life as it is for you. Now that might actually be the stakes, and that might be a reasonable choice to make. Like, I gotta take care of home first. But rather than thinking of it as like life as it is versus an abstract principle, thinking about it as life as it is for me versus life as it is for you.
I think in that response is the assumption that when one says life as it is not taking into account life as it is for all of us and our various realities. That life as it is for me in Georgia is also life as it is for someone in New York. Life as it is for me down here is also life as it is for someone in Palestine. And so I think creating environments and communities in which all of our lives together get to have room to speak, in which both of us get to be fully human, and we get to talk about our various realities and figure out creative ways of dealing with those realities without diminishing the humanity or the pain of another person, is necessary, especially for right now, because in some sense, because I'm noticing there's a regional thing that's happening here. I'm noticing that, like, say somebody who's living in a very blue area, they may be thinking differently than someone who's living in a mostly red area or a swing state that's purple. And so I don't think that when I say life as it is, I definitely don't think that it's just life for me and not for you, because I don't think anyone wins in that. And I just think that's unfair to anybody to diminish how their lived experiences, how is shaping how they think about the world, name the world, and act within the world. And I think to be able to speak to all of those things is necessary right now, because no matter what happens, we still got to figure out a way how to live together, whatever way this goes. And so I can't diminish anyone's lived experience. And so when I say life as it is, I'm thinking, for me, I'm thinking for all of us, and let's do the hard, courageous work of not shutting one another down. Or if I speak as a Black Southerner, that doesn't account for nothing. I've had people literally block me, say I don't care about Palestinians, literally call me a Zionist. Like, I've had people say all types of things about me, and I'm like, no, I'm speaking particularly to the experience of a Black Southerner, and I think you should speak to your experience, and let's talk about all of these experiences together, because we need to, and if we don't, we lose.
And I want to tag on. I'm sorry. I just wanted to tag onto that. I had a commenter flat out say, "Oh, you're prioritizing your survival, then I'm unfollowing you." They didn't say comfort. They didn't say privileges. They said survival. That's the word that was used, and I screenshot that. And that's what it comes down to, is like trying to explain that to people, because you talk about in the South, and I talked about the mentality of what I'm hearing from some people on the far left is let's let it all burn. And I made a video, very emotional video, before flying back home, because I was just getting overwhelmed with everything. And I said, you want to know what it's like when it all burns? Come look at Memphis, Tennessee, because you let us burn and you never came back for us. There are a lot of us. Memphis, Detroit, Baltimore. There are a lot of cities, Black cities, especially cities like Memphis, at the heart of the civil rights movement, that they let it burn. Everything failed. MLK got assassinated. There was chaos, and no one came back for us, because I've not seen the proof that once everything is burned, that people are going to organize and actually come back, because we say in Memphis that the bullet that murdered MLK is still ringing through the city, and the crime is astronomical. And so I look sometimes at people who are living in maybe a blue suburb that's pretty safe, and they talk about, well, 40,000 dead children, and I go, I get it, and I understand. But you also have to understand, I had to see my, brother after he was murdered and left on the street like a dog, because the violence in Memphis is crazy. And I keep hearing that phrase of violence is liberation. And it's very triggering, to be honest, coming from one of the most violent cities in the country, because we don't feel very liberated down in Memphis. And I just feel like there's actual proof and evidence of what has happened when we've had big movements for rights, and the cities that just got used in those moments, and then all the people got left behind. And it's like you said, it's different experiences.
Elizabeth, what is a reasonable issue or a fair issue to prioritize, and what is it? So there might be people in the middle of America, white people, or anywhere in America, who would say, yeah, Donald Trump is racist, and yes, he's going to ban Muslims, and yeah, he's xenophobic and has xenophobic policies at the border, but my taxes are lower, and I need to survive. I need to pay bills. I need to send my kid to college. I need to pay my mortgage. My life is better. My life is better when Donald Trump is president, even though I concede those other issues. I think we might say, at least I would say, those issues of relative comfort and privilege are not worth the lives of Palestinian people. But when we're talking about the police murdering us, or we're talking about destructive policies here, now we're on kind of even moral levels. But for some people, it gets messy when you start talking about abortion. It gets messy when you start talking about, other issues that they may believe are equally morally urgent, ethically urgent. How do you decide when to consider the conditions of other people and the impact the policies have on other people, versus when to look and focus on the self?
So this is probably like a roundabout answer, but the way I look at it is, what are you voting for? Because a lot of people with Trump are voting to restrict other people to benefit themselves. But the reason why I don't hold any ill will toward anybody on the left, whether they are voting for Jill, for Claudia, for Brother Cornell, for Kamala, not voting for president at all, whatever they're doing. The reason why I don't hold ill will to anybody on that side of the spectrum is every single person's story is the same. They are voting to save someone's life. Every time. If you talk to anybody across the spectrum of the left and what they're voting for, they are voting to literally save someone's life. That is the story that I hear consistently. And that's why I have respect for what people are doing all across that spectrum. I can't bring myself to, yes, I'm going to say the persuasive things that I want to say online, because of course I want you to vote the way that I'm voting, because in my analysis, personal analysis, I do think it's the best way. But I'm not going to shame somebody, and I could be wrong. You know, like that's the thing.
Is
And kind of recognizing
about this particular choice, and this is for both of you all. Shouldn't some votes be shamed? Should I be shaming a Trump voter?
that's different. Now, when I talk about shame, so this is the thing. I had a whole video on shame, and I talked about how shame is not supposed to be used to motivate people. Shame will never motivate somebody. When you are trying to motivate somebody to act in the way of fighting for rights or act in democracy in some way, shame is not the motivator. But when you need somebody to shut up and be quiet and not act, that's when shame works. And I saved that for racists. I saved that for people who are trying to bring harm to others. That is what I saved that shame for. But yeah, that I feel like it gets murky over there when you talk about over there on the right, because we have seen like what they stand for is the destruction of lives, the literal destruction of lives. Whereas you see folks on the other side of the spectrum consistently between a rock and a hard place, trying to figure out the best way to save as many lives. And I think that is the difference. None of us want anybody to get hurt at all. And there's people on that side of the spectrum that would relish in people getting hurt. And I think that is the huge difference there. And that's just the way I see it. And maybe that's a very simplistic way of looking at it, but
no. I guess the concern I have, Dante, and feel free to piggyback on the other thing too, is all the nation states are violent. Nation states are created out of a particular type of colonial and imperial logic. So wherever there's a nation state, there's going to be unmerited suffering. There's going to be premature death. There's going to be domination. So there's always going to be enough domestic stuff to keep us in a state of resistance and survival. I'm saying that to say, if we accept the calculation that you two seem to be making right now, it seems like we could never care about the globe because there's always prioritized at home that's more urgent and more pressing.
Not if you build coalitions early. That is the thing that everybody's missing. People were like, what do we need to change it? Because the office of the president, you're never going to vote for what you want. The office of the president is to be the commander in chief and to carry out war that is decided on by a whole other body. Congress decides you go to war and the president has to do it no matter what. It's unethical at its core. We honestly, what we need is a very difficult thing, but I've been talking about it for years, a constitutional convention. We have got to overhaul the root of this. Mm-hmm. And the problem that a lot of people are having is, how do we protect ourselves from fascism now so that we can continue to build the coalition to make that change later? Because it's not going to happen overnight and it will take work, a lot of work. You know, you need to, you talk about building community and saving each other. You need to go outside and actually talk to your neighbors. COVID done messed us up. People don't even know. And I don't mean to be rude to nobody, okay? But I got sometimes people telling me we need a revolution. I'm like, baby, you can't make an order over the phone without having a panic attack. I need you to take a step back and take a breather, because we've got to build ourselves up mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and come together as a community and fix these things at the root. But if your activism stops at voting, you're not really engaging in activism. That's one little piece of it.
Yeah, and I love that. I love the idea of coalition building. I think being down south, we get a very particular relation to the civil rights movement and a very particular history of the civil rights movement, in which in very serious ways we learn very early. Even if we're not going into politics or things like that, we're learning very early that you got to figure out a way to build with people. It may not be called coalition building and things like that, but you're figuring out ways to build institutional and political power with people who may be alike or different than you, because at the end of the day, you have to find a way to live together. So, for example, going back to the point of shame, at the coffee shop I used to work at that I write at right now, I've made it my point over this political season to talk to random Americans about politics, and we sharing just, I just want to talk about it. I'm like, hey, I asked them two questions. I was like, hey, how you doing? And usually they say, I'm doing good. And then they ask me, how you doing? I was like, you want me to tell you the truth or you want me to lie to you? Then they're like, I want you to tell me the truth. Okay. I am worried about us politically, and so then we're in a conversation, and things like that. And then I asked them, I said, how are you feeling? you know, how you're processing, and then what matters to you this political season. And so out of that conversation, like, I meet all types of people. I have friends down here who are Arab and Muslim, you know, who you know are here in Augusta, Georgia, and you know they ain't going out and protesting because, like, hey, you just can't do that here, you know. So you need
it's definitely different down there.
Yeah, you just can't, and it's unfair to be like, yo, if y'all ain't out there protesting as Arab and Muslim girls, you know, then you're not down for your people, which they're Palestinians here in Augusta. They're Jordanians who if we know history, you know, they were pushed out, and so Jordanians and Palestinians are pretty much the same kind of people. They're family and together, you know.
Half Jordan is Palestinian.
Yeah. So they have a stakes in here, and yet they can't go out there. And then if you're sharing a drink with somebody, you can meet somebody who is a Trump supporter. A few weeks ago, guy comes in, Trump hat on, and he asked me, "Hey Dante, how you doing?" I say, "How you doing, brother?" You know, he says, "I'm doing good." And I asked him, and he asked me how I'm doing. I said, "You want me to lie to you? You want me to tell you the truth?" He says, "I want you to tell me the truth." I said, "I am worried about us politically, and I'm worried about you having that hat on." Now let's talk about politics.
Okay, go. See, this is why you are a better person. The Lord's still working on me. I would say nothing. I just hope you trip down the steps and push this too. But
that's okay too. That's okay too. I'm not opposed to that.
Let me ask you, since we got on the spiritual level, and you are a man of God, and definitely a Southern preacher. I knew that earlier when you said it is vast and vile and visceral. I said, if he ain't dropped that Trinity,
3 points in the hoop, man.
That's it, man. It's time for the benediction. I said, man. But when is it time to make a moral gesture? When are we confronted with a moral non-starter? For example, if Joe Biden had been replaced by someone who had the same political profile as Kamala Harris, same ideologies and history as Kamala Harris, but didn't believe in interracial marriage, or believed that blacks were naturally inferior in math, or believed that gay people shouldn't get married, or believed that Palestinians don't have a right to enter that land. And I'm not putting all those on the same tier. I'm just saying these are all different things. At least one of those things would probably be a moral non-starter for you. But still, by all measurable accounts, better than Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any position a candidate could have that, despite the practical value of voting for them, they present such a clear non-starter at the moral level that we have to prioritize that? And again, that's for both of y'all. I'm gonna start with giving honor to God, pastor. Then I'm going to.
Yeah, I want to say in a perfect world, yes, you know, but we don't live in a perfect world, and you got to make choices. And I think that, like, we got to figure out, we got to do the hard work of wrestling with, like, I don't agree with you, but I have to figure out a way to work with you. And I think people are going to vary and differ on how they fall on non-starters and where they draw their red line. And I think that's less of a individual, it's both an individual thing and a collective thing where we have to wrestle together hard, like, where is our red lines and what's at stake in the red lines that we draw, and like how do we given what we have to deal with, how do we mitigate harm with what we're given? Because we know that, like, somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose. Let's try and test them together. And that's not easy, because, like, a lot of times people want a black and white world of easy answers. And honestly, I don't know how to answer that question, bro. If I'm gonna just keep it a stack with you, I don't know how to answer that question in a way that would say, this is a non-starter, this is a red line, because that's just not how life works. We gotta, because there are literally, like, there are literally people that you have to figure out how to work with and ask who's going to mitigate the harm and who is at least willing to be moved, you know, who's at least willing to think about things. Because I'm of the belief, you know, and it may be a spiritual belief, but I don't think this is inherently spiritual, but that like people can change. And even if they believe bad in one season, it doesn't mean that they will always believe bad in every season.
Can
And maybe
Donald Trump be moved and changed?
I don't think so, because God, he has given no like indication that he desires to be moved or changed.
When you say people, you mean people in the abstract, not every person.
Yeah, not every person. I mean people in the abstract, but like, and that differs based on the person. And for some people, they're gonna be like, because I think for many people,
some of y'all Negroes is hopeless.
Oh, I think some people are hopeless. I don't think because I don't think everybody wants to change. I think desperate people want power. I think powerful people act with desperation, and I cannot trust that somebody who is desperate on any issue can be trustworthy with caring for everybody, because they won't be able to think clear enough to say that I'm wrong in this area and I need to grow. And that's the problem with much of the politics, or even us who care deeply about things. We're so sure of ourselves that we don't think that there's room to grow. And so I think that, like, I don't know how to answer that question sufficiently, but I will say that is a collective answer, a collective wrestling courageously that we have to do. Because I think the real implication here is, like, the real implication is on Vice President Harris, because for some people, her relationship, even on a very logistical level, you know, one would say that there's very little power that she actually has, or there's very little like movement one can actually make on foreign policy. And maybe people need to really be thinking about the legal relationship between America and Israel, you know, or whatnot, and thinking about how does one attack that legal relationship. And given the limitations that we're in, like, one has to be like asking, are we being unfair to a person, no matter who they are, based on their position? You know, and how do we navigate our demands with their positions to actually enact those demands? Can they legitimately get that done? And if they can't, you know, am I holding them to a standard that is unfair to them, given the system that we all are living in? And so for some people, they're going to be like, hey, I can't mess with it. And I'm like, cool. Now give me your argument as to why. Now, if your argument ain't sufficient, then like we need to like really talk about some stuff. But if you're just being like loud and like inconsiderate and not really thinking about like how things work, then let's go back to shame and like, all right, bro, like that person just talking over there. Let's talk to people who actually really want to talk about this in a very courageous and hard way. So I think some people, that's just going to differ based on the community.
Listen,
and for
okay,
us,
fair enough.
We got to deal with that.
I'm going to give you the last word on this. Again, we live and work in different domains. You also are trained as an attorney, and now I look at attorneys sometimes who have to represent serial killers and mass murderers and such, and they're not making a moral case for why they're arguing them. They're arguing with the defense is within the ethical system and logic of the law, which is to uphold a broader principle that everyone deserves a zealous defense. So I might defend this person to make sure that the state doesn't railroad anybody, right? I might defend this person to make sure that everyone has access to a fair trial, and I may protect as a juror, releasing the guilty so that none of the innocent people get incarcerated. There are all these ways that we're always speaking to a grander principle. Is voting in line with that kind of grander principle, or should I be thinking in line of the more more prosaic and more literal kind of right and wrong, black and white moral principles that I tend to attach to, some of these religious traditions or some of these other things where it's like, look, I can't vote for evil. How do I negotiate that?
So I would say, first of all, make sure you're not coming from misinformation or disinformation. That's the first step. Go in there with clear eyes and know exactly what's going on, and just have all the information in front of you, which was pretty much what I was doing with my Jill Stein videos, where people were like, she's got her hands in nothing that's bad. I'm like, everybody does. So starting from there. And then for me, I think the second prong to all of that is understanding what the system is that you are participating in. So if you are voting for president, you are voting for someone who runs the largest police force in the United States, which is the military. So you're picking a top cop. The executive branch is the law enforcement branch. That's literally what it is. Having that framing and understanding, this is what you're picking. It doesn't matter who they are. If this person, okay, let's say Brother Cornel West isn't a cop, he's a wannabe cop because he's running for that position. Point blank, period. And just going into it with that clear mindset and not having that cognitive dissonance, because a lot of people are misusing the term cognitive dissonance. They think that means doing something that goes opposite your morals. So for example, voting for Kamala Harris, even though there's things that she's doing that go against your morals, that's not cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is when you know you're doing that and you try to make excuses to make it seem like your behavior is actually matching your morals, rather than just recognizing this is a terrible situation and I'm going against this here because I'm choosing the path of this particular harm reduction, right? Don't stress yourself and get into that space of trying to make up lies to make everything seem sweeter. And then at the end of the day, if you really feel like my non-starter is, let's say, Palestine, that's fine. Like I said, I don't have an issue with that because nobody here has a moral high ground. I will say that over and over and over again. You have to live with you. You have to make sure that you're doing something that you can live with and that you feel okay about. And at the end of the day, that is the thing that matters the most. I hope that I could motivate you to be active in other ways, maybe vote in other things like ballot initiatives or something like that. But at the end of the day, you've got to do what you are most comfortable with. And so that's my main message to everybody there.
I think that's a powerful message, y'all. I appreciate y'all. Y'all are funny and inspirational and brilliant and consistent and courageous. And I give thanks for y'all. And there are gonna be people in the comments right now who don't agree with anything y'all just said, but I think they will at least, in fact, a lot of people won't be agreeing with y'all, but they will appreciate your sincerity, your earnestness, your analysis, right? And all three of us may have a different analysis. But we all love freedom. We all love Black people. We all want a world better than the way we found it. And we're all gonna keep doing this work no matter what. So just thank you all for the work you all do in the world, for your voices in the world, and for hanging with us at Night School. I appreciate y'all. Y'all got to come back again soon.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Peace. All right, family. That was Night School. Thank you so much for watching tonight. We had a great conversation. Stick with us after the show. I'm going to do a live question and answer session on any topic y'all want. We can talk politics, but we don't have to talk politics. We can talk about anything y'all want to talk about in the live Q&A coming up in about 15 minutes after this show ends. So I'll see you very, very soon. Everybody, thank you for watching Night School tonight, though. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the join button. Hit that like button, family. When I say hit the like button, that means hit that little thumbs up, because when you do that, it lets the YouTube algorithms know that we matter too. We out here fighting the fight against corporate media, against mainstream outlets, and we can only win that fight when y'all step up and hit that like button and show YouTube that you're interested in this kind of content. And when you hit the subscribe button, it doesn't cost you a thing. But what it does do is increases our footprint on the YouTube space. And by increasing our footprint, more people have access to the content. More people will get the content delivered to them, because the bigger you are, the more people care about what you got to say. Unfortunately, that's how this media thing works. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and family, if you're so inclined, I ask you to hit the join button. When you hit the join button, you can become a monthly paid member of the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel. If you're watching on a desktop or a laptop right now, you probably see that join button. If you don't have one, go into the description. You can find a link to joining the channel. I ask everybody join the channel who wants to and who can, because again, joining the channel creates space for us to have the financial stability and the financial security that is necessary to do this work in the world. And that means having a courageous voice. It also means Night School, 9 p.m. Monday to Friday. It means office hours, 9 p.m. Office hours on Sunday, 9 p.m. Saturday, 9 a.m. Again, Saturday, 9 a.m. Coffee and Books podcast. And of course, 9 a.m. on Sunday, you get the Classroom in the Cell podcast with political prisoner Mumia Abu Jamal. Now, again, we ask that you do it, but if you can't make a monthly commitment, I ask that you make a one-time commitment. If everybody right now were to just make a donation, consider it your monthly tuition to do all this stuff at Night School, we'd be so, so grateful. If you go to Cash App right now, if you go to PayPal right now, if you go to Venmo right now, if you go to Zelle right now, any of those platforms, you can make a payment just for the month, not recurring, just one time. You could give $1. We'd be grateful. You could give $1 million. We'd be maybe a little extra grateful, but we'd be grateful for anything from $1 to $1 million to anything in between. But if everybody watching right now were to donate $10, if everybody watching right now were to donate $10, we will be able to meet our financial goals for the month. That means paying for all of the equipment that we use, all the staffing needs that we have, all of the studio costs that we have, all the technology costs that we have. It means being able to do the work we do every single day. Remember, we don't have a billionaire backing us. We don't have corporate or mainstream media funding us. This is all from the power of the people. So please, I ask everybody who is so inclined to please, again, anything from $1 to $1 million is worthwhile. We're grateful for it. But if everybody watching right now could give 10, we would be able to meet those goals. Anyway, family, thank you for watching. I know the community is growing because I can see the numbers, but I can also feel the energy growing. I can feel the community growing, and that's more important than anything, including money. So keep liking the channel, keep subscribing to the channel, keep joining the channel, keep sharing the content, but most importantly, keep studying the content, because that's what night school is all about. Thanks, family. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.